I'm Melanie Hatter. I am the author of Malawi Sisters, which came out from Four Way Books last year. I am enormously excited to be participating in the Bad Mouth reading series. Thank you, Rebecca, for the invitation to participate. I will read a little bit from Malawi Sisters, but first I want to try something new. I've been working on a short story over the last couple weeks, inspired by the current world that we're living in right now. And this is really brand new, and I still am working on it. It still has a lot of work to be done, but I hope that once it's finished, it will be accepted somewhere. I'll be finding some places to submit it to. Right now, I've tentatively named it The Protest. So I'm just going to read a little bit of it. Two black men were taking up space on the couch by the window with a backpack claiming the armchair, talking quietly like they were plotting something. One had dreadlocks that stopped just past his shoulders, and the other had a long beard, like a Muslim. She'd spotted them as soon as she came into the coffee shop and was keeping an eye on them. The armchair was her favorite place to sit, and she wanted them to leave by the time she got through the line and received her blonde vanilla latte. She was still pissed that she'd lost a design contract last week to a black-owned firm. She deserved that job, needed that job to pay her 2 employees. She'd gotten another contract, maybe even a better one, but still. She eyed the 2 African Americans. They were big, black men. She could tell, even though they were seated, casually dressed with jeans and bulky jackets. She wondered what was hidden beneath their coats, and what was in the backpack. When her turn came at the counter, she casually said to the barista, "You know, these 2 African American men have been sitting there all this time and haven't bought anything. And the way they're whispering like that, they're making me uncomfortable." The barista leaned over the counter to confirm the report and frowned as if unsure what to do, so she added, "I feel really uncomfortable. You might want to have the manager talk to them," and raised her eyebrows for emphasis. The young man nodded and disappeared into the back, then returned with the manager, a short, thin, white man who approached the men on the couch. She couldn't hear the exchange clearly until the one with the beard raised his voice and said, "We're not doing anything wrong." The manager disappeared, and 2 minutes later, 2 police officers entered the shop, both male, both white. She had her coffee by this point and took a seat at a middle table to watch the drama unfold. "This'll be good," she thought. Both black men stood up and insisted they weren't doing anything wrong. They were waiting for a colleague. As the African Americans rose up, one of the officers took a step back, and she saw him place his right hand on his gun. The black guy with the dreadlocks moved both his hands, and in a split second, the officer pulled his gun and fired 2 shots. Stunned, she knocked over her coffee cup, scrambling to get out of her seat. The bearded black man had his hands in the air and kept yelling, "What did you do?" His voice shook, and though she couldn't see for certain, she thought there were tears on his cheeks. People were screaming and yelling, struggling to keep herself together. She moved back toward the other side of the store, and as she did, the man with the dreadlocks came into view. He was slumped over on his side on the couch, his hair obscuring his face, and she thought how young and small he looked. I'm going to end it there. So that is an excerpt of a short story called The Protest, and we'll see where it takes me. So I do want to read from Malawi Sisters. This is a story about the aftermath of a black woman being shot by a white man. and how her family deals with the loss, how they get caught up in the Black Lives Matter movement and the headlines of really what's happening even today. I had written this novel inspired by the shooting of Renisha McBride, which was in 2013, and there are no words for what we're still continuing to experience today, these same shootings. So this excerpt from Malawi Sisters is the family is at a march in honor of Malawi. The oldest sister is named Kenya, and the other surviving sister is Ghana. Kenya rummaged in her purse for a tissue and pressed it firmly on her forefinger, trying to stop the bleeding, trying to be discreet. Chewing the skin until it bled was a habit she had never understood and struggled to stop. She folded over the tissue and dabbed the clean side on her temple. The temperature was hotter than she'd expected, and she knew the back of her dress was soaked with perspiration. She looked around, hoping no one was paying attention to her, despite sitting on a stage before a mass of people. She hoped she still appeared cute and stylish. Signs bobbed and swayed above the crowd. Justice for Malawi. Make an arrest. Black lives matter. Black women matter. Something about that last one stung. Until now, she hadn't seen any headlines about black women being killed by cops or vigilantes. She was sure her sister wasn't the first, and wondered if the news media didn't consider the deaths of black women as newsworthy enough. Black women did matter. They were mothers and daughters and sisters and wives. She thought of Sydney, always expecting her to take care of everything at home, always taking her for granted. He had promised to be here today, but an important meeting had come up in New York. That's what happened when married to a man who ran an international events business. It made for a comfortable life, but he was never home, which gave him plenty of opportunity to stray. 2 times that she knew of, but her gut said there'd been many more. She loved and hated him. The 2 emotions collided, bashing each other and jockeying for the forefront of her mind. She wanted to love him, to put his transgressions behind her. That was how her mother put it. It's a transgression, something men do. You can't blame them for it. Has Daddy ever cheated on you? Oh, heavens, no. Her mother had laughed as if it was unthinkable, but he was still a man. Junior kicked his feet against the legs of the metal chair, and Charlene leaned heavily on Kenya's arm. She should have left them at home, but when Sydney said no to them attending the rally and then up and left for New York, she decided he didn't get to dictate what she did with the kids. Ghana had stressed the event would be a teachable moment. The children need to know, Ghana said, her hands gesturing wildly. They need to understand what kind of a world we live in, the horrors they face. Malawi's part of something bigger. This is a movement. We're on the cusp of change, and if we don't engage the young people, then all hope is lost. Her sister's enthusiasm had inspired Kenya, swooping her up in the moment with the notion that the event would teach her children something about race and unity, something she hadn't figured out how to teach them herself. Now, sitting on a stage in front of all these emotional people, Kenya began to nibble another finger. She eyed her sister standing by the lectern, next to a woman whose name Kenya had forgotten, speaking into a microphone. Television cameras were lined up along the front of the stage, filming every move made by anyone at the mic. Her father sat on the other side of Junior, calm, stoic. Her mother next to him in dark glasses hiding dark circles around her eyes, and a straw hat with a small brim shading her face. Kenya looked back at her sister, dressed in a long skirt and a tank top, her jacket slung on the back of the next seat to Charlene. Such a hippie chick. But Kenya was glad it was her sister addressing the audience and not herself. Ghana was graceful as she stepped to the microphone, and this surprised Kenya. Her sister was eloquent, strong, passionate, all the things Kenya wished to be. Ghana was free to be anything she wanted. In high school and college, Kenya panicked whenever she got a B. And the fact that Ghana never got her bachelor's degree dumbfounded Kenya, who would never have gotten away with not graduating. But then, look at her life. She got paid by the hour and probably had no health insurance. There was no security in that kind of a life. Junior patted her forearm. "Mom, when will the speeches be over? I want to march." "I don't know, honey. Sit up. It won't be long. Look at your Aunt Gon. Isn't she beautiful?" Junior shrugged. Ghana was beautiful, Kenya thought. She wished she were more like Ghana. Speeches and more speeches, and everyone would march to the courthouse to demand the arrest of Jeffrey Davis, who apparently hadn't been seen since the shooting. Ghana said a group had been camping outside his house with signs, and the police had come to make them leave him alone. Because they were across the street and not on his property, the police couldn't legally get them to move. Ghana found this amusing, but Kenya thought it was pathetic. "Too many of us are dying," Ghana said, her voice echoing through the speakers into the air. "My sister will not die in vain. We must demand change." The crowd burst into applause, and Kenya nudged her daughter to a sitting position and clapped her hands with a sudden burst of energy. The balled-up bloody tissue fell to her feet, and a breeze shifted it toward the edge of the stage, causing Kenya to panic. She watched it teeter like a red-spotted carnation, afraid of it being blown into the audience. Then her father stood up, drawing her back into the moment, and she looked at Ghana, who glanced back, perhaps seeking reassurance or checking to make sure everyone was still awake, and Kenya stood up to applaud, forgetting the tissue. Her sister was a superstar. Thank you again to Badmouth for inviting me to participate. This is a new world for us writers, sharing our work electronically and through video, Zoom events. But it's a beautiful way, too, for us to continue connecting and sharing our work, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed the reading.